Welcome, dear listener, to the Right Here, Right Queer podcast. This is Noah Hawthorne. Today I am welcomed by Carolina Cruz.
Hello!
Talking about our upcoming anthology, An Outstretched Hand.
So I drew the Hierophant, and that is what my story kind of branched from, was the Hierophant card.
What did you think when you drew the card that inspired your story?
I remember I was kind of late to the party as far as getting my card drawn, and I was actually out with some friends at a convention. So I was with a friend when I got it drawn, and my friend is currently making a game where tarot cards are a major mechanic. It's a TTRPG called All the Witches. Not sponsored. And I remember turning to them and being like, I don't know what this is.
Someone help!
Yeah, they didn't really know either at the time, but we both gotten a lot more experience with tarot since. So I was interested to see what the vibes would be, and then when I started to look into them and realized it was to do with tradition and religion, I was like, oh, those are things that I, sarcastically, have never written before and have no experience with.
This is me!
So I got pretty optimistic pretty quickly. I was like, I think this is something I can work with.
So you say religion and tradition. Is that how you interpreted it, or did that interpretation kind of change as you began looking into it more and connecting with it more?
It definitely started changing, because when I started looking into it, a lot of the kind of upright readings of the tarot card are to do with like authority figures, tradition, hierarchy, and religion. And those are things that I have historically struggled with as a person. So as I continued to look into it, and I looked into kind of the reversed read of it with the kind of challenging those structures and deconstructing those structures, I was like, okay, that's something that I am more comfortable with when it comes to storytelling. So I was excited to find that that would be a possibility, because I'm bad about writing about how hierarchy is good, actually.
So flipping it on its head made you excited to write it. Is there anything else about it that made you really down bad for it?
It took a lot of time to get down bad for it, because initially when I was thinking of all these ideas, I felt like I had to challenge myself to be different from my previous attempts at addressing this, because my first novel I ever wrote was about challenging religious hierarchy and organized religion. And I was like, if I'm going to do this again, how is it going to be different from The Unwanted Prophet? And then that kind of made me hit a roadblock for a long time, but eventually I'm not even sure how exactly it clicked or where the idea came from. But what has ended up happening was the characters themselves, when the idea of like the hierarchy not being necessarily a religion, but this like brotherhood of knights with a code and all of that kind of thing, and an organization where the hierarchy comes from like this like interpersonal trust, that kind of got me pumped, and off we went from there.
Yeah, you don't mess with the code, and I feel like once you do, things start to get kind of haywire. And okay, before I get too spoilery, why don't you give us a quick rundown of your story?
The story that I have come up with is about a knight who was injured in a battle, and that injury has left him disabled, literally, unable to fight the way that he used to be able to. And he's starting to pick up on the fact that his disability has kind of lost him the loyalty of his fellow knights, and that he's not going to be able to stick around and be part of this family anymore in his current state. And out of desperation, when kind of the structures that he has been placed within, this religion that the knights follow and the code, and even though he's doing everything right, it's really not going to work out for him, he decides to step off the beaten path and seek out these old myths he grew up with and find a fairy in the woods and trap it to ask it if it will heal him instead. And it does, but not how he expected, and things kind of spiral out of control again from there.
That's what I really liked, are the unforeseen consequences. Because, magical healing is kind of one of those things that you have to be particular with and you have to treat with care. And I really think that you put a good spin on it, on even if everything happens the way you want it to, there's still going to be these unforeseen consequences, and your relationships are going to change, and you're going to see all these kind of gaps. So I really liked the way that you did that. That was one of my favorite parts. But what was your favorite part of the story?
I have two, and one of them's more like lighthearted and the other's more to do with the theme. So I will stick to the lighthearted one because I think that we can get into the other one later. I really liked getting to write the fairy. I think it is quite a creature, and it was really fun and hard to write something otherworldly and try and keep it kind of inhuman and distant from what the main character is feeling and what the main character's like societal expectations are. I also decided to have it speak in the royal we most of the time.
I could hear it in my head. I loved it. I could hear it.
It is such a creature. I love it so much. So getting to create it and have it interact with normal people was very fun.
And there was a lot of, like you say, it's very much a creature, and the way that Philippe traps it is very visceral, I guess. It's a very cool take on fairies in general, and like his little inner monologue about, oh, that's probably just a myth that fairies put out there, that they don't like iron, when really, you know, because it's true, iron's in blood. So I just thought that was really cool.
It was fun to kind of figure out, kind of like how when people write vampires, they pick and choose which parts of vampire mythology they want to respect and use as rules for their story and which parts they want to modify. That's kind of how I approached the fairy, because in a lot of times, you know, I've watched a lot of vampire movies recently where they've kind of removed Christianity and crosses from, or kind of changed why those things work on vampires, instead of just kind of being like, yeah, it's, as we all know, crosses, kind of getting into the why that might be, or if it would be anymore in the modern era. So it was kind of fun to approach fairies from that angle as well.
And I have to say, your art of the fairy, by the way, is so cool. I love it. That was like, I saw it before I read the story, and I'm not gonna lie, when I read it, I was like, I was expecting the fairy to be kind of maybe on Philippe's side, because he was just so cool looking, and then I read it and I was like, wow, this is a fairy. So what do you hope that readers will take away from your story?
I wrote this from a very personal place because I myself am disabled. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as well as a host of other comorbidities, which are super duper fun. And I think that being in the workforce, as they say, and having a physical disability, you start to realize how people kind of look at you and treat you. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. And I think that I wanted to find a way to represent that, and also to hopefully be encouraging at the same time, and be like, your worth does not come from whether or not other people think that you are beneficial to society in a way. So hopefully through kind of Philippe's journey and his confrontation with that, other people can kind of understand that in a way that I wouldn't otherwise be able to put into words.
I say the ending made me feel very empowered, and I think that that will definitely come across with other people as well, that fuck them all, it doesn't matter. You are valuable as a person as you are.
You will always be yourself, and your body is not the most important thing about you.
So before this anthology, did you have like a lot of tarot experience? Do you have like a deck, or like what has that been like for you?
It's one of those things where I was raised to believe that those kinds of things were not acceptable for me to use. So I had kind of a curiosity, but I didn't explore tarot for a long time. But now, between the game my friend is developing and some of my personal friends being very witchy and being tarot readers and such in town, I've developed a better understanding of it and a respect for it. And definitely, while I don't practice myself, I do have a tarot deck. When I initially first got this card, I was very excited. And again, we were at a convention where a lot of people were selling art and tarot decks and such. And the friend that I was with was so kind as to get me my own. So we have a few in our house now, because my friend who does tarot readings professionally has a lot of decks of their own, and oftentimes they will have too many, and they will kind of pick which ones they don't particularly use very often and gift those to people. So I think we've got a couple from them, but mine, the first one I got, I have it with me here, is a horror tarot deck.
Oh boy.
Yeah, illustrated by Abigail Larson, who is an artist that I have admired and tried to emulate even when I was younger. So that was very meaningful to me. That is like my personal deck, and that's the one that I kind of have at my desk. If I should ever want to get more into it or feel the need for guidance in that way, I think that's the one that I would go with.
That's so rad. Did any of the cards from that deck like particularly speak to you?
Well, I have a personal affinity for the death card, just because I love the idea of new beginnings and change change, and so that one's always spoken to me, and it's a fun one in this one. I gotta say, as much as I love the art, the Hierophant in this one kind of falls flat for me. It's not my favorite version of the card that I've seen, but I also like the Hanged Man, because the Hanged Man in this one is like one of those, like, you see it at the beginning of the Pirates of the Caribbean series where they have like the cages with the bodies in them hanging, and it's one of those, and I think that's really fun.
Oh, yeah, you know, that's the card I always really liked.
The Hangman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal favorite of mine. I like it when people do fan art of series that they enjoy with the characters as tarot. And people keep asking me if I'm going to do that with my characters for my books. Definitely not. Unfortunately, it's more likely that I'm going to do that with the characters from the Saw franchise, which is kind of embarrassing. But I always find that's I guess when we talk about like my experience with tarot, that's the main one, is I really enjoy seeing people's interpretation of the themes in the cards and how they relate to stories that we see, which is why it's so fun that we're kind of like reversing that and taking the themes of the cards and putting those into stories rather than relating existing stories to tarot cards.
Speaking of art, you have bestowed us with a most gorgeous cover that you are currently working on at the time of recording. But how do you feel about the cover? How did you feel about putting the art together for the anthology?
I am super excited. I'm really happy to be able to do that. I was a little nervous at first because to me, it's a big pressure to be the one to represent what this whole story is. And now it's just kind of turned into, I feel very honored. I think this anthology is really great, and I think we've all done really well with what we have, and I feel like I just hope that the cover art does it justice and makes people excited to read it. And I want to say this just in case like people don't pick up on it when they get the book, but you'll see it within the interior, which is going to be gorgeous. There are these little icons that I've designed that have elements from each of the stories that the author of each story has helped me pick out and work on, and those are all on the card on the cover, so that each of us, we're all represented on the cover a little bit in our own way, which I think is really fun.
I love the way that you did that. The card itself, the design, and the hand. I've always been a big fan of your art style to begin with, and I love it. So I'm like, this is just really cool to me that we can kind of like keep it all in the family, you know? And it's been a big project that we've all been able to work on together, which is really cool. And yeah, those little header images are so pretty, and I think it's been really cool that we can like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, just team efforted, I guess.
Collaborate?
Yeah, that word. That's a good one.
Yeah, we're authors. We know words sometimes.
Synonyms, what are those?
Oh gosh, don't even get me started. Thank you. Shout out to Word Hippo. Not sponsored.
So when it comes to the anthology, is there anything else that you would like people to know about it?
It's really good. It's such a cool concept. I think that that's my main thing, is I just can't even get over the idea to begin with. It was so cool to like let go of control, because oftentimes the starting point is the hardest when it comes to an anthology, and being given that starting point was really fun. It was a limitation that was challenging in a really fun and interesting way, and it was really unique, and I'm really glad to have been a part of it.
Awesome. Well, where can listeners find out more about you and your work?
Yeah. You can find me at Nina Wolverina. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm also pretty active on Blue Sky. I will be probably posting more art to do with this story, but I also just do fantasy art in general. So if you like that kind of thing, you can find it with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, you can find out more about the Outstretched Hand Tarot Anthology on our Right Here, Right Queer Instagram page. And thanks for listening.